Okay guys, so we have yet more bait finesse content coming at you fast and heavy, and in this box here we have the long-awaited Daiwa Queen of the Night, and this reel just came in today, and ironically my favorite Japanese reel reviewer just put up his video of this reel today. So this came from Japan Lure Shop. And let's see here. Let's see what he gave me. Oh, check this out. I don't know the brand, but it says Monster Chatter. Interesting looking chatterbait. Moth Chatter. Okay, looks like a good color. Looks like it's got, I guess, kind of a different kind of blade. It's the coffin shaped blade like Z-Man, but anyways, we're going to put this off to the side. I'm going to take this out and check that out. Now, I've been anticipating this reel ever since it came out, and as soon as I open up this box and show it to you, you'll know why. Alright, look at that. The Queen of the Night, or otherwise known as the Daiwa Gekkabijin Air TWPE Special. Alright. Paperwork there. Probably a lot of paperwork I should probably read if I was gonna use braid with this reel. But I'm not, so I'm gonna ignore that. Gonna put all this off to the side, and yep, that's it for the box. No oil. Let's take it out of this crispy wrapper right here. Boom, check that out. Check that out. Very, very smooth. Feels like a Shimano. Check that out. Let's see, where is this made? Made in Thailand, no big deal. This is not a made in Japan reel, but I really don't care. But look at this thing. This thing looks sick. Got your little emblem there. Check out that spool. Thumb bar feels solid. No mush. Once again, it's smooth like a Shimano. Feels more like a Shimano than a Daiwa. It's got that buttery smoothness to it. But yeah, I'm gonna do my customary inspection on this reel, take some notes compared to the reel that it's based off of, and I will be right back. So I'm done with my inspection, and obviously we can't analyze this reel without bringing out this reel right here. That of course is the 2020 Alphas Air TW, the reel that the Gekkabijin is based off of. Now, if you're wondering why did Daiwa bring out the Gekkabijin when the Alphas Air is still a relatively new reel, I mean it's only like a year and a half old. And I guess the best way to explain it, at least in my opinion, is that the Alphas Air is a bass reel that Daiwa approves to be used in salt water, while the Gekkabijin is a purpose-built saltwater bait finesse reel that obviously you can cross over into freshwater if you want, which is what I'm doing. And they have made a few changes to the Gekkabijin to differentiate it from the alphas, and that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. Now, during my inspection, as well as comparing both reels on Daiwa's website, I found about 6 or 7 changes in the Gekkabijin to separate it from the alphas, but I would say they are about 85% the same reel. So basically that means that the Gekkabijin will have an aluminum frame and aluminum handle side plate. It's going to have the 80mm handle with the Zion drag star. Of course, it's got the T-wing line guide in silver. I believe the palming side plate is graphite, not Zion. Now the handle side plate trim pieces are still plastic, including the zero adjuster. And the Gekkabijin will have all the other usual, I guess, Daiwa marketing features like the ultimate tournament drag and all the hyper marketing features that the Alpha's Air has. But now it's time to go over the differences. So obviously the most visual change is going to be the color scheme. Now, I never thought that the Alpha's Air TW was a particularly good looking reel, and the fact that they gave it a kind of a nondescript gray finish didn't really add to that fact. But it's funny how changing the color on a reel makes it look better, at least in my opinion. And obviously you can see that the Gekkabijin is sporting a shiny deep black glossy paint job with just the right amount of red accents in my opinion. So you got your red nut retainer, you got your red little trim piece here, and it's more of a maroon color than a bright red. In fact, this trim piece reminds me of the color of the Shimano Scorpion MGL. Now they kept the zero adjuster black, and once again it is still plastic, kind of disappointing. But you also got your little logo up here. They kept the red spacers for the smaller spool. Now originally I thought when I saw the pictures of this reel that it should have had a red spool, but now that I have it in hand, I think I prefer the black spool. And the cutout on the top of the frame is a little bit different. You got your 2 squares for the Gekkabijin, while of course on the Alphas you're looking at 2 rectangles. So yeah, in my opinion, the Gekkabijin is a far more striking reel, especially when you look at it from the handle side plate. And it really reminds me of these 2 reels that I have. The first one being the SS Air, which has a shiny dark black finish for the side plates and a lot of red accents as well. It's one of my favorite Daiwa reels right here. And then you have your 2015 Shimano Aldebaran BFS XG Limited. That is even shinier black than the SS Air, with your hint of red here and there, like right there. The spool, of course, spool tension. So yeah, I obviously have a thing for red and black reels. Now another significant change is that internally the Gekkabijin has way more ball bearings than the Alphas. This has a total of 12 plus 1 bearings, so just as many bearings as the STEEZ. Now the Alphas has 6 plus 1, but the difference is that the bearings on the Gekkabijin are designated as the CRBB or corrosion resistant ball bearings, while the Alphas doesn't have that designation, at least on Daiwa's website. So that shows you that this is a purpose-built saltwater BFS reel. Now here's a strange change. The Alpha's Air has a gear ratio of 8.6 to 1, while the Gekkabijin has a fractionally slower ratio of 8.5 to 1. So I wonder why they made that change. But it's a change nonetheless. Now another major change is going to be the spools. They are the same size at 28 millimeters in diameter by I think 21 or 22 millimeters across. But other than the color and the porting, You can see on the Gekkabijin that they've narrowed the channel where the line lays. And in fact, when I saw that, it immediately reminded me of another saltwater bait finesse reel from Shimano. It's a really old one called the Breenius. It had a similar spool where they narrowed that channel. And incidentally, the Breenius, just like this reel here, was designed to fish light braid. So another significant change, or I should say important change for the Gekkabijin, is that Daiwa says this sports the air brake rotor, which is not surprising, but they say it has a braid tune. So I'm not sure if that's a change in the magnet strength or the spring strength, but with Shimano's DC reels, the braid line mode is usually the mode that has the least amount of braking. So if that's the case for this reel, hopefully we'll see some kind of a casting performance increase. But another positive change that they made was changing the knob end caps to chrome instead of the just plain old gloss black. So much better looking on the Gekkabijin. Now last but not least, the Gekkabijin has a drag clicker, and that's something that more and more you guys are wanting. Now there's been quite a few people who have installed drag clickers in their alphas, but now this Gekkabijin has one stock from Daiwa. So I'm sure you can buy the parts for the drag clicker and stick them in your alphas instead of going third party. So with that last change being said, it is time to pop the scales out and deep dive into this spool. Okay, so the scale's out, and according to the website, the Gekkabijin is supposed to weigh a little bit more than the alphas. Alright, so the alphas is coming in at I think 5.63 ounces, and the Gekkabijin you're looking at 5.78, so just a hair heavier, and you really can't tell the difference. But I will say, with the extra ball bearings, which I'm sure some of them went into the knobs, the Gekkabijin does feel a little bit more solid when turning the handle. But now let's get into the spool weights. So before we weigh the spools, let's take a look at the difference between the two. So they're both an ultra tiny 28mm. Now, I'm not sure if KTF makes this spool or not. It didn't say anything on Daiwa's website, but let's take a look at it. There's actually two steps right there. Then it goes into the channel where the line lays. So if you compare that with the alphas, they're about the same depth, but the Gekkabijin is going to hold way less line. Now the air brake rotor looks to be the same on both, and it just barely comes out. See that? And let's compare that with the alphas. Oh yeah, so I think we see the braid tune air rotor there. So look how far the alpha's air rotor twists out, and then look how far the Gekkabijin air rotor twists out. So it barely moves like a millimeter. So this reel is definitely going to have less aggressive brakes than the alphas. That's pretty significant. Once again, alphas, Gekkabijin. Okay, so now we know there's a difference in how far the rotor moves out. Let's get a weight. Now, full disclosure, I already know what this spool weighs because the day that I got my reel, I watched my favorite Japanese tackle reviewer get his, and he did all the weighing. But let's show you guys. So with the bearing, and they both have the same bearing. The Alphas weighs 8 grams. Now the Gekkabijin, 8.6. So it's a little bit over half a gram heavier, and it actually feels it. You can tell, picking one up after the other. And I'm thinking they probably didn't thin the spool on this reel as much as they did with the Alphas to make this thing more sturdy for braid. But I'm gonna do something real quick just because I'm the most thorough tackle tester on YouTube. Now, if you remove the ball bearing on the Gekkabijin spool, the empty spool weight is probably going to be about 6.8 grams. And yes, I was disappointed when I saw that. But empty spool weight is not what matters in the end. It's the spool filled with line. So I went ahead and I filled both spools full of line. And you can see the line lay on the Gekkabijin spool is pretty atrocious. Look at that huge concave area. So it holds a lot less line than the Alphas. So holding them in hand, it feels like the Gekkabijin spool is lighter, and we're going to see if that's true. Now, if I kept spooling the Gekkabijin to try to, fill in this concave section, it would have overflowed the sides here. So it is what it is. All right, so Alpha's air filled with line is 10.9. Gekkabijin, 9.9. So it went from being about 0.6 of a gram heavier to being about a gram lighter once you fill them up with line. So that more than makes up for the heavier spool weight. And once again, this line lay is atrocious. I'm sure with braid it might be a little bit better. It'll hold a little bit more line, but I doubt that will, make up the gap for the Alpha's air. So you got a line. So basically that means you have a spool once full of line combined with the less aggressive brakes that should equate to farther casting than the Alphas. So in theory, the Gekkabijin should be a better caster than the Alpha's air, even with the trout magnet. And that's pretty cool, because hopefully you guys saw the previous video. The Alpha's air was dethroned by the Black Knight 2 as being the best stock out of the box bait caster casting a trout magnet. So before we wrap this video up by talking about the price and my final thoughts, I just want to show you guys something, and it's something that I do with all Daiwa reels that I get that have the zero adjuster, and that is to see how much play Daiwa put into each spool from the factory, and with this Gekkabijin there's none. And I believe the Alphas was like that as well. And some of the reels that I have from Daiwa that have the zero adjuster have a lot of play in the spool. But for this one, it appears that there's none. I'm not sure if that's just inconsistency at Daiwa's factory, or if they did it that way on purpose. But as you can see, the spool has no problem spinning as it turned a little bit just sitting here. And I got the brakes, I think, cranked up to 20. They seem pretty strong, I guess. But this is a Daiwa, so we know that the brakes will work, no problem. So that's going to bring us to the price of this reel. And if you watched my video, How to Buy JDM Tackle version 2.0, you'll know that the price for a specific reel will vary greatly from shop to shop. But I got mine from Japan Lure Shop, and apparently it cost $353 before shipping. Now the price of the Alpha's Air at Japan Lure Shop is like $292. So you're looking at a pretty steep price increase for this reel versus the Alphas. But if you go over to Digitaka, they are charging $340 plus free shipping while the alphas is $306. So you're looking at about a $35 increase in price over the alphas at Digitaka. Now, do I think it's worth it? Well, at least right now on paper, yes, because it looks so much better than the alphas. Way more special looking, way more striking. You probably definitely not run into anyone that has this reel out on the water. And then when you combine that with the fact that even though the spool seems to be engineered to be heavier when empty, so it can be stronger to run thin braided lines, since it holds so little line, it ends up being lighter than the spool on the alphas once full. And then don't forget that they tuned the air rotor to not extend out as far, so this is going to be less braked than the alphas. So all that combined makes this reel worth it in my opinion, because the promise of longer casts as well as better casting with the 1 gram trout magnet is there, at least on paper. But of course, we're gonna have to spool both reels up, cast them side by side to find out if that's true. So there we go, guys. The 2021 Daiwa Queen of the Night, or Gekkabijin Air TWPE Special. Thanks a lot.